It's time for America Outdoors Radio, the show that covers the outdoor scene across the U.S. of A. and the entire continent. Fishing, hunting, conservation, outdoor recreation, and great destinations. We cover it all every week. It's your country, your outdoors. Let's explore it together with your host, John Kruse.
Welcome aboard. Are you on the road this weekend, maybe enjoying a long Independence Day weekend? I know a lot of folks are, and with the 4th falling on a Thursday, you can't really blame anyone for that, can you? Better still, this is a great time to not only travel, but go fishing. I was doing a little research about fishing piers this past week, and I've got to tell you, whether you're fishing and crabbing off the pier in Newport, Oregon, next to the Rogue Ale Brewery, casting buzz bombs, or fishing a herring under a bobber for salmon and at one of the many fishing piers in the greater Seattle area, or angling off one of the fishing piers in Pascagoula, Mississippi, the home of our affiliate WPMO, you've got a lot of options for fishing in the saltwater, whether or not you have a boat. Personally, I've got some wonderful pier fishing memories from my home in Washington State, where I started off as a kid catching piling perch off the pier in Edmonds, Washington, and in later years, fishing off of marinas in the San Juan Islands, catching tasty greenling, and in the evening, tangling with dogfish sharks with my wife, just for the fun of it over a beer or two. Dock fishing isn't limited to the saltwater, of course. There's plenty of city, county, and state parks, as well as resort marinas around the nation, with fishing docks on lakes where you can reel in everything from trout to bass to panfish and a whole lot more. The bottom line is this: if you find yourself traveling this summer, bring a fishing rod and look for the nearest dock. You just might be in for a fun fishing trip if you do. This week on the show, we'll get to chat with my friend Richy Harrod, the host of the Northwest Outdoorsman television show, about his recent Eastern and Western U.S. do-it-yourself fishing trips. We'll also talk a little conservation during this program, too. As you know, plastic trash is a huge problem in our oceans and inland waterways right now. Fortunately, a device called a trash wheel has been invented to combat this issue in Baltimore, Maryland, where the harbor has really been cleaned up in recent years. Now, the folks at Yamaha, makers of some very fine marine motors and more, are teaming up to develop a better mousetrap, or in this case, a better trash wheel that's going to debut on the coast of Georgia and may be a prototype for trash cleanup around the nation. Martin Peters from Yamaha will join us to tell you more about that. Another guest on our program this week is Joel Webster with the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. He'll be talking about our public lands in America and the fact that over 9.5 million acres of land owned by you and me through the federal government, they're currently landlocked and inaccessible to us. Throw in landlocked state lands on top of that, and you might get a little upset about this issue after you hear more about it. In addition to this, we'll share some of the top lakes and rivers to fish in the nation, according to Bassmaster Magazine. And last but not least, share an interview we aired last year with Beau Baty. He is the owner of Wilderness Ridge Trail Llamas, and he wants to take you on backcountry trips with his llamas to go fishing and do other things in Wyoming and Utah. Why are we airing this again? Because it just won an Excellence in Craft Award from the Outdoor Writers Association of America 2 weeks ago, where it was recognized as one of the best 2 audio segments aired about outdoor fun and adventure in the entire country. But before we talk llamas, let's talk a little fishing. Our first conversation today on America Outdoors Radio is going to be with my old friend Richy Harrod. He is the host of a great television show called the Northwest Outdoorsman. Been in production for several years now. You can see it on NBC Sports Northwest in Washington and Oregon, portions of Idaho too. It's also on AT&T Sportsnet in the Rocky Mountain region and throughout Canada on Wild TV. Richy, great to have you on board.
Hey, nice talking to you, John.
So, Richy, I wanted to get you on today because you've literally been fishing everywhere, and I wanted to talk about some of your recent adventures. Let's start off in the Florida Keys. That's on my bucket list, but it just got scratched off of yours. How was your fishing there?
Well, you know, my wife and I went down there for vacation, and you know me, I had to go fishing even if I was doing something else. So we rented a boat and went out into the Keys and just found these little islands, and I just anchored up, cast some bait, and caught mutton snapper, caught mangrove snapper, things called blue runners. It was just a blast. I caught like 25 fish and, really never had done it before. So it was super fun.
And that is something I want to focus on here, folks. In case you didn't know, Richy's show is all about do-it-yourself trips. So the fact that you can go to a completely different fishery in a different part of the country and have that much success, that speaks volumes about what the everyman can do if they want to do something similar. Is it pretty easy to just rent a boat and get out there in the Florida Keys and do exactly what you did?
It is very easy, and I would encourage anybody, not to shy away from doing something like that because, that kind of self-adventure, the memories that you'll make doing that are probably the best memories that you can make rather than going with someone else to kind of show you where to do it. It's like figure it out yourself, and it's really easy. I asked around, asked a couple questions. The boat rentals are numerous up and down the Keys. They're not that expensive a whole day, somewhere around $200. And so you can go out, just basically buy some hooks and bait and look for structure. Fishing there isn't any different than it is anywhere else in a way. You just look for structure. There's some things to learn about fish on the breaks between shallow water and deep water. There's some things like that. And if I went back again, I would really know how to dial it in much better.
Well, you still had great success. And speaking of success, let's head back west. I was looking at your Facebook page, and I saw you've been fishing out at Anderson Lake Ranch. This has recently become known as perhaps the best big kokanee fishery in the state of Idaho. Tell our listeners how this went, and I understand you were filming a show while you were there with Bob Loomis from Max Lure.
Yep, we were filming a show with Bob Loomis and Bobby Schindler and his wife Robin Schindler, who are Max Lure pro staffers. They happen to be really good friends of mine. We used to work together when I was working at the Forest Service, so we have that connection. They invited us out, which is kind of in their backyard. This lake is amazing. Very large lake, about 8,500 acres, pretty deep too. Lots of kokanee. The limit is 25 kokanee per person, so that gives you some idea of how many fish are really in the lake.
Wow.
So unfortunately, we kind of hit it when a pressure system had just gone through, and like most times, it puts the fish kind of on a slow bite, but we still managed in 2 days there to get, something like 18 fish, and they were in that 2 to 3 pound range. They're just gorgeous, gorgeous fish.
Let me tell you about kokanee. If you're from the Midwest or the East, you're probably not familiar with the species. They are landlocked sockeye salmon, and a lot of anglers would tell you that when it comes to a red meat fish in the fresh water, they are the tastiest fish you can have. Most kokanee in most waters run 7 to 9 inches, so getting 2 to 3 pound fish, those are real trophies, and boy, oh boy, I'm sure those tasted great on the grill, didn't they, Richy?
Oh, man, yeah, we actually did a little fish fry, our deep-fried kokanee recipe right there, because Bobby and Rob and Schindler had never done that before. So I took along my little deep fryer, and we cooked up some fish, and it was so good, so fresh. You can't beat kokanee.
And that's one other thing about your show is every edition you have a cooking segment featuring either you or your wife. One more fishery I want to talk about is one that you weren't involved in, but your father was, Brownlee Reservoir on the border of Oregon and Idaho. Looking at Facebook, your dad had quite the day catching a whole bunch of quality crappie.
Yeah, we have fished there in the past several times. It's pretty close to where I grew up, and the last couple of years, the crappie and Brownlee Reservoir have been, in my opinion, trophy size. We're talking 12, 13-inch crappie, and they're just beautiful fish.
Oh, those are some huge fish. And there's some folks right now listening in Chattanooga, Tennessee, thinking, maybe I need to head over to Oregon and Idaho and catch some of these slab crappie. How do you catch them?
Well, they're pretty easy. Basically, you look for points, rocky structure, mark the fish on your graph in your boat, and once you find a school of them, you can just throw jigs at them, crappie jigs, little twister tails. You can use a little bit of bait if you want on those, but it's actually pretty easy, and when they're on the bite, man, it's a lot of fun.
Well, there you go. Whether you want to go to Brownlee Reservoir along the border of Idaho and Oregon, or Anderson Lake Ranch in southern Idaho, or the Florida Keys near Marathon, lots of opportunities for you and lots that Richy just enjoyed, and you can too. This is a great show. Again, it's the Northwest Outdoorsman, and you can watch it on NBC Sports Northwest. You can watch it on AT&T Sportsnet Rocky Mountains, or you can watch it on Wild TV. Look for it. There's also YouTube editions, and you can always go to Harrod, Harrod, outdoors.com to look at past episodes too. Richy, thanks for sharing your exploits with us today on America Outdoors Radio.
You bet. Thanks, John.
Why book at Sportsman's Cove Lodge?
Why is Alaska like no other place on Earth? It hasn't changed in thousands of years.
From the way you get here on a float plane to the way you go out with the guides and the boats, it's just a professional experience.
And I said, this is as good as it gets. I said, if you can't catch fish here, you can't catch fish anywhere.
Your experience with us will leave you speechless.
Book now at alaskasbestlodge.com.
There's a place where the fishing is year-round, where the sun shines 300 days a year. The wineries and breweries are right downtown. The hiking and cycling offer spectacular views you just don't get in the big cities. Fortunately, the place is real and vibrant. It's the Dalles, Oregon, just 90 short minutes from Portland, along the gorgeous Columbia River, where the adventures are limited only by your imagination. Find out more at explorethedalles.com.
Looking to reel in the marketing opportunity of a lifetime? Then set the hook, because we've got it right here. America Outdoors Radio has sponsorships available, and we offer an affordable platform to reach thousands of listeners interested in fishing, hunting, and the outdoors. Find out more by contacting host John Kruse through his website at AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com. That's AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com. But hurry, if you wait too long, this big opportunity might just get away. That's AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com.
You're back with America Outdoors Radio. I'm John Kruse, and if you're looking for something really out of the ordinary for your next backcountry adventure, I've got just the thing. It's going on a llama-supported pack trip with Wilderness Ridge Trail Llamas. We are talking to the owner today, Beau Baty. Beau, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, John, for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, excited to talk to everyone about llamas here.
Well, absolutely. This is really unique. Where exactly do you operate, and what services do you offer?
So we operate in Yellowstone National Park, which is kind of the big one, the Grand Teton out of Jackson Hole, and the Wind River Range. So everything kind of right there in Montana, Wyoming. And what we offer is llama-assisted backpacking trips, where we go on a pack trip, for one night all the way up to 7 nights, and the llamas carry all of our gear and equipment, and we provide everything: the shuttle, transportation, the llamas, the guide, all the equipment and gear, and obviously the best meals we can possibly bring in with the llamas.
So I've been on a few horseback trips into the backcountry where you ride your horse and the mules carry all your gear, but a llama pack trip, that's, pardon the pun, a different animal. You can't exactly ride a llama, can you?
No. We get that question asked a lot, actually. So the llamas, kind of the interaction that takes place is the llamas were used for 6,000 years by the Inca civilization. So llamas are known as beasts of burden primarily in South America. So the llamas will carry 70 to 90 pounds, and each person that comes on a llama-assisted backpacking trip will have the opportunity to use their own llama. So each llama has its name, they have their personality and their quirks, and they get to lead a llama. And the llama will carry all of our camping gear and the personal gear of the person that's leading the llama each day that we're on the trek. So the llama, the dynamic that provides is incredible and really enhances the experience.
Well, I want to talk about that dynamic a little bit in terms of the interaction that the llamas and the hikers have on these trips. I don't know a whole lot about the personality of llamas. Are they standoffish? Are they friendly? I've heard they'll spit on you if you treat them wrong.
Yeah. The llamas, they definitely can spit. They're super fun to be around because, they're not like a dog where a dog needs to be pet and have lots of attention, but they'll totally allow you to cuddle them, to pet them, to give them hugs. And once you form a bond with your animal, they recognize you and they totally know who you are. And so, like on day 2 of our trips, everyone wants to have the same llama they had on day 1, which is, kind of speaks to the animal's personality. They're very calm, and in high-stress situations, they're actually really mellow, unlike horses and mules, which is great for outfitting for people coming from all over the world to go on these trips. The llamas, like I said, they breathe confidence, and it's something they've been bred for thousands of years. And so when they're on the trail, they're all business, and then when we get to camp, they're really fun and playful. So, yeah, that's kind of the dynamic between the guests and the llamas.
Oh, that sounds like all sorts of fun. A couple of other questions about llamas in terms of their personality. Are they like horses? Are they like dogs? Each one has a different personality?
Oh, yeah. I would say that each llama is totally different than the next one. And they each have their own personality, their own quirks, things they like and don't like. And it's pretty crazy. And I think the most commented thing that we hear on a trip from our guests after trip is that they just can't believe the different personalities of each of the llamas, And we had a trip yesterday, actually, down in southern Utah, one of our areas, and the guest called me. He's like, we laughed and laughed and laughed. We just couldn't believe it. The llama's quirky personalities were so funny, and people just get a kick out of spending time with them because they're just such a unique animal.
This sounds like all sorts of fun. Folks, you're listening to America Outdoors Radio. We're talking to Beau Baty, the owner of Wilderness Ridge Trail Llamas. He'll take you into Yellowstone National Park, Grand Teton National Park, and Wyoming's Wind River Range on llama-supported pack trips. Let's talk about some of your destinations. I noticed, looking at your website, you go to a lot of lakes, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, that's traditional old-school outfitting, is the kind of the fall hunting outfitting. So when the summer market, over the last 4 or 5 decades became a big thing, most people just had one little micro area. And I'm a traveler, kind of a gypsy at heart, and I love all the beauty of the different areas. And I told my wife, I said, we need to offer trips all over the West. This is what we love, the Rocky Mountains, and we want to show people the highlights of all these different beautiful areas and their uniqueness. So that's what we sought out to do. And we just kind of keep expanding just because we love so many of these unique areas and want to show people what they're all about.
Now, I understand a lot of folks are just going to hike and going to camp, but it sounds like, again, looking at your destinations, that bringing your fishing rod is probably a pretty good bet, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, going to the Wind Rivers or Yellowstone's backcountry and not having a fly fishing rod, it's almost a crime. If you don't know how to fish or want to learn how to fish or you're an expert fisherman, definitely we can help you out at any kind of level that you're at, and definitely recommend it. It's one of life's, pleasures that needs to be explored by beginners and experts alike.
Beau, I agree. I love alpine lake fishing probably more than just about anything else when it comes to fishing. And folks, Beau's absolutely right. It doesn't take much. You can tie on a fly with spinning gear and have a weighted bobber and do just fine. You can toss spinners. You can toss spoons. I would ask that you make it a single barbless hook because catch and release fishing is pretty important in these places. The type of trout you're catching, are we talking cutthroat? Are we talking brookies, rainbows? What are we talking here?
Yeah, it kind of just depends, actually. For Yellowstone's one of the greatest public land fisheries in the entire world. And, basically untouched by man. There's no cattle grazing. So you have the native fish, mountain whitefish. You have, North Slope cutthroat, which everyone's coming to Yellowstone really to catch the cutthroats. And then lots of brook trout. And some of the big lakes like Heart Lake have just monster lake trout. And, Heart Lake is a place in Yellowstone hard to get to, and we take float tubes in there. You got to hike 10 miles in, camp at a beautiful campsite. You're the only one on the lake with float tubes, and it's just a wonderful experience. So, yeah, lots of cutthroats and brook trout for sure in most of the areas in the Western Rockies over here.
This sounds great. And one other thing that I know has got to be great is the camping and probably the food. Do your guides cook it for the customers every night?
Yep. Absolutely. We actually provide a gourmet catered breakfast, and so we find out the dietary preferences and restrictions of each guest, and then we actually go and buy all the ingredients and food to say it's a 5-day pack trip into Yellowstone, and we'll make the breakfast, lunch, and dinner each and every day for the guest. And it's as fresh as food as we can possibly find. Most of it's locally and organically sourced and grown. I mean, that's one of the highlights of our trips, and we try to have a 5-star experience, and having the best meals possible definitely helps that come together nicely.
Well, Beau, it sounds not only like a 5-star experience, but an actual bucket list experience, too. Folks, again, a pack trip supported by llamas in one of our great national parks, whether it be Yellowstone or Grand Teton, or going into the Wind River Range of Wyoming, you can do it. The website to find out more is wildlandllamatreks.com. Llama with 2 L's there. That's wildlandllamatreks.com. Check out the different offerings. Contact Beau and his wife and make your reservations for an adventure you will never forget. Beau, thanks for sharing this with us today on America Outdoors Radio.
Hey, you bet. Thank you, John. Really appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day, man.
So you sit down and do your budget, and you look at all your monthly costs and your bills and your income, and it seems like there's never quite enough. You know what would really help? Finding $500 a month to help balance things out. That is the typical savings, $500 a month for a family when you switch to MediShare for your health care. And when it comes to healthcare sharing ministries, MediShare is really the gold standard. It's been around for 25 years and has more than 400,000 members. It's been around so long and grown so much because it works. And whether you're single or married or have kids, this could make sitting down to do a monthly budget a lot more fun. $500 a month can more than cover a car payment or pay back loans, whatever. So join MediShare and go out to dinner to celebrate. Here's the number to call. They are incredibly kind and helpful to talk to. 855-90-BIBLE. That's 855-90-BIBLE. 855-90-BIBLE.
You're back in with America Outdoors Radio. I'm John Kruse. We're talking to Joel Webster. He is with the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, and our topic are our public lands, the places where you and I get to go fish, get to go hike, get to go hunt, get to go recreate outdoors because these federal lands belong to us. However, it's hard to get at some of these lands. Joel, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John.
So, Joel, in 2018, the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, and we're just going to use shorthand from here on out, TRCP and Onyx, the producers of those great online maps, teamed up to show that our public lands in the West, about 9.5 million acres of them are landlocked, not available to public access unless you happen to parachute in or have a helicopter. What's preventing us from getting to all of this land?
I'd like to start out, too, to just talk about the awareness of the issue. And I think, historically, when people access public lands before GPS technologies existed, we were looking at paper maps. And when you had paper maps, you were generally going to those larger blocks of public land because those are the places that you knew you could access and not be trespassing on private land. And really, when GPSs came out, and this really was started with Onyx, with their SD cards, but you could know where you were in proximity to private land, federal land, state land, and you could know how big those parcels are. But also, when you drove into a small parcel, you knew that you could park your car there and go into that small area. And so, really, technology has made the public aware of these smaller parcels of public land, and it's really opened up millions of acres that were previously accessible but not utilized by the public because people just weren't confident they could actually access many of these places. But also what this technology has done is it's made the public aware of those parcels that they can't get to. So you're driving down a dirt road, out in the middle of nowhere, trying to access some small parcels of public land for hunting or fishing, and you can see that there's a section of land or a couple sections of land or maybe even less that's just a couple hundred yards away from the road, but there's just no way for the public to get there without asking permission from a private landowner. And so really, people were talking about this, people became more aware of it, but nobody really knew how much land was inaccessible. So that's something that Onyx and TRCP last year, we teamed up, looked at landlocked public lands across 13 western states, so all the 11 public land states plus the 2 Dakotas, and found that 9.5 million acres
are surrounded by private land, and they cannot be accessed by the public unless you get permission from the private landowner. And that's a lot of land that's inaccessible.
I guess it's important to note here, when we're talking private landowners, we're not talking about just individuals that happen to own land. We might be talking about timber companies. We might be talking about power administrations or irrigation districts or even railroads that restrict your ability to access these lands, correct?
That's right. And also, I want to point out that some private landowners do allow access, but what we looked at is whether or not there was permanent legal access there, like a road that touched public land somewhere. So there could be a 5,000-acre piece of public land. If there was one road touching it at one place, then that would be considered accessible. But if there wasn't, it was inaccessible, and so you'd have to have that permission. And some people, you can get that permission in some places, and some landowners are really generous about that. But that was how we defined that.
So you've now gone a step further with Onyx. You've teamed up to produce a landlocked state lands report. How does this differ from the 30,000-foot view of our federal public lands?
Yeah, thanks, John. I mean, one of the questions that came to us immediately after we rolled out the federal public landlocked report is, why don't you guys look at state lands? I mean, there's a whole bunch of them across the West. A lot of them have similar access issues. How many of those are landlocked, and what can we do about that? And so right now, Onyx and TRCP we're working together to crunch the numbers, and we're going to roll out a report this August that calculates the total acreage of landlocked state lands. We're going to be looking at state wildlife management areas, state parks, as well as state trust lands. And state trust lands are generally going to be the ones, I should say, by far and away, most landlocked state lands are going to be state trust lands just because of the way that they were established, where each western state, when they entered statehood, were granted land by the federal government to help support public institutions, generally schools. And they were given to those states in really an arbitrary way, where they give them like a couple of sections in each township. And so by their very nature, a lot of them ended up being landlocked. There's been consolidation and sales over the years that have changed some of those ownership patterns, but the history of it has really sort of created this situation. And there's 39 million acres of state trust lands across the 11 western states, which is the scope of the project that we're focused on this time. But we're really excited to see what numbers we come up with. And so far, we've run the numbers on the state of Colorado.
Well, and I wanted to talk about that, Joel. Again, folks, you're listening to America Outdoors Radio. We're talking to Joel Webster with the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. The topic, our public lands and our inability to get at quite a few of them. So talking about Colorado, I saw a figure that you published that there's 435,000 total landlocked acres that the public can't get to. And folks, this is one of the most popular states in the nation when it comes to big game hunting, fishing, and hiking. And as bad as that is, I see that there's an additional 1.78 million acres accessible to the public, yet closed to hunting. What's that all about? I'm pretty sure we're not talking about inside the suburbs or city of Denver and Colorado Springs here, are we?
That's right. Colorado's a bit of an outlier in that it's the only state in the Mountain West that does not allow public access to the majority of its state trust lands. And so if you look at other states, whether it's Washington or Montana or New Mexico or California, state trust lands are open to the public for hunting and fishing and other types of outdoor recreation. Those lands are managed differently than federal lands in that they are not managed for multiple use. They do have to generate a profit to support state institutions, but other states have set that up in a way that supports public recreation. Colorado, on the other hand, like I said, is an outlier. What they've done is that they have leased those state trust lands to private entities for exclusive use, and so the public's not allowed to use them. With that said, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the state wildlife agency, and the state land board have been working together to try and address this issue. And 558,000 acres of the almost 2.8 million acres of state trust lands in the state are open for hunting and wildlife-dependent recreation for a portion of the year. And they've been working on opening up additional acres. I know that the current governor, Governor Polis, is also actively working on expanding access to these lands. But there's really a lot that can be done there. Like you said, 1.78 million acres are accessible, but yet closed. And that's just, in our opinion, it's probably the greatest current opportunity to expand public access in the West right now are these state trust lands in Colorado. And there's a huge opportunity here to really open up hunting opportunities in a lot of the state. And one of the things, too, that I think is really important about Colorado is most of their public lands are on the west side of the state where the mountains are. A lot of these state trust lands are on the east side of the state, and there's fantastic bird hunting there. There's actually really good big game hunting. And if these lands could be made accessible and open to hunting, it would just be great for sportsmen.
I agree completely. I lived in Colorado for a couple of years. I've never seen state residents more passionate about outdoor recreation as I've seen there. So I'm glad that it's starting to change. I hope the tide continues to turn. In the meantime, folks, if you want to find out more, here's a website for you, unlockingpubliclands.org. That's part of the TRCP.org website, unlockingpubliclands.org. Go ahead and take a look, sign up to get more information, and find out how you can get involved. And one way you can do so is by contacting your congressional representatives and senators, as well as state legislators, and let them know that you want the ability to access your public lands. If enough of us do this, it's going to turn the tide, just like it's turning in Colorado right now. Joel, thanks for sharing this with us on America Outdoors Radio.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate it.
Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, a nationwide group working to keep public lands in public hands. We've helped ban the use of drones for hunting. We help repair wildlife corridors in key riparian areas. We speak up against illegal ATV use. We collaborate with elected leaders to keep public lands in public hands. We're Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, with membership in all 50 states and Canada. Please join this dynamic conservation group. Check us out at backcountryhunters.org.
They were our brothers, our sisters, sons and daughters. They were our parents, family, our neighbors, and our friends. How can we express the gratitude that we all owe the thousands and thousands of American veterans who have sacrificed so much for our country's freedom? It was they who stepped forward from the time this country was created to fight for everything we know about liberty and freedom. And although we celebrate their victories and console them for their losses by creating monuments and honoring them in parades, the truth is we can never do enough for the freedom they've given us. Perhaps the most important thing we can do is reach out to those veterans closest to us and simply tell them, thank you. Thank you for all you've done for freedom. All of us at Shiloh Inns would like to take this opportunity to recognize the many men and women who have served and continue to serve our country so that we will always be free. Thank you, veterans, from everybody at Shiloh Inns.
There's a place where the fishing is year-round, where the sun shines 300 days a year. The wineries and breweries are right downtown. The hiking and cycling offers spectacular views you just don't get in the big cities. Fortunately, the place is real and vibrant. It's the Dalles, Oregon, just 90 short minutes from Portland, along the gorgeous Columbia River, where the adventures are limited only by your imagination. Find out more at explorethedalles.com.
We've been telling you about Sportsman's Cove Lodge in Southeast Alaska for a while now, and there's a reason. They are the only Alaska lodge we talk about on this show. It's because they're truly Alaska's best lodge. The adventure starts with a float plane ride from Ketchikan, after which you'll get the chance to experience some of the best hospitality, food, and wonderful people you'll ever meet. Wildlife is abundant, from bears and deer to eagles and whales, and let's not forget the reason you're here, the fishing. Halibut, salmon, lingcod, rockfish, true cod, and more. It's all waiting for you in abundance at Sportsman's Cove Lodge. Book your trip today at alaskasbestlodge.com. That's alaskasbestlodge.com for Sportsman's Cove Lodge.
Looking to reel in the marketing opportunity of a lifetime? Then set the hook because we've got it right here. America Outdoors Radio has sponsorships available, and we offer an affordable platform to reach thousands of listeners interested in fishing, hunting, and the outdoors. Find out more by contacting host John Kruse through his website at AmericanOutdoorsRadio.com. That's AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com. But hurry, if you wait too long, this big opportunity might just get away. That's AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com.
You're back in with America Outdoors Radio. I'm John Kruse, and it's time for some outdoors news. Bassmaster Magazine has released the highly anticipated rankings of the best bass fisheries in the nation for 2019, and for the first time ever, New York's St. Lawrence River earned the top spot. According to James Hall, editor of Bassmaster Magazine, the St. Lawrence is not only healthy right now, but seems to be showing off. There have been years where a spirited internal debate was required to assign the top spot in the rankings. This year was easy after looking at the unbelievable weights being produced at the upper St. Lawrence River. And on top of that, the scenery is stunning. If you're looking for the best angling experience in the country right now, the St. Lawrence River should be your next destination. Again, that's from the editor of Bassmaster Magazine. If you're curious as to what other lakes were in the top 10, they are, at least through the top 6 in order. Lake Guntersville in Alabama is number 2. Number 3, Sam Rayburn Reservoir in Texas. Number 4, Clear Lake in California. Number 5, Lake Fork in Texas. And falling to number 6, Chickamauga Lake in Tennessee. Now that you know the top 6 bass fishing destinations, let's break it down by region to tell you about the best waters to fish in each one. Starting off in the Western U.S., California is the place to be, with the top 7 bass lakes in the Western U.S. to include not only Clear Lake, but also New Melones, Lake Paris, the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta, Diamond Valley Lake, Don Pedro Reservoir, and Lake Berryessa. In the central U.S., the top 2 lakes for bass are in the Lone Star State. That would be Sam Rayburn Reservoir and Lake Fork, but the number 3 spot is in Wisconsin, located in Sturgeon Bay. In the southeast, Lake Guntersville in Alabama comes out on top, followed by Chickamauga Lake in Tennessee and the Santee Cooper Lakes in South Carolina. Finally, in the northeastern U.S., the St. Lawrence River is followed by Michigan's St. Clair and New York's Lake Erie, which, as you may recall, is one heck of a walleye factory too. If you want to find out about all 100 of the top bass fishing lakes in the nation, go to Bassmaster.com or pick up a copy of the latest Bassmaster magazine. It's been a stunning success for Baltimore and for the harbor there, and it's been so successful that Yamaha Motors is now partnering with the makers of Mr. Trash Wheel to bring one or more to the Georgia coast. Tell us how this new device is going to differ from the current one and exactly where it's going to be stationed at.
Well, it will differ from the current one in that it will be land-based, and it'll operate in a spillway, basically a storm drain, a large storm drain that drains Brunswick, Georgia, which is a city in coastal Georgia. The idea is to make sure that this device, which operates with a conveyor in the very same way, can then deposit the debris that it picks out of the waterway into a dumpster on land, and then that dumpster can be much more easily removed than the one in Baltimore because it doesn't have to be ferried through water. Also, this device will have to operate where the water flow is inconsistent and where the water itself can't power the conveyor. So we're going to incorporate Yamaha electric motors and a Yamaha control system into the device to make sure that it can indeed operate in that kind of environment.
How much trash can these wheels, these water wheels, trash wheels, pick up? How much of a difference can they make?
In Baltimore, since the inception, I think it's been about 2 years ago, it's collected 12,000 tons of plastic.
Oh, my gosh.
We're looking at it from the perspective of the cost. When you introduce floating debris plastics into a large waterway, such as the harbor in Baltimore, we know that a skimmer, a boat that goes around sort of skimming up all the plastics, that can cost as much as $5,000 a ton to collect it that way. If you're collecting it at the choke point with this kind of device, it can cost less than $1,000 a ton. So the same is true, if you think about it, in pretty much any other waterway. If you sort of allow it to disperse, it's harder to pick up.
Interesting, really interesting, and what a difference maker this can be to our rivers, to our harbors, and to the ocean itself. And folks, you know, when these plastics, you've been hearing the news, when they break down, they end up in fish, they end up on the bottom of the ocean, and they eventually end up in us. This is a real crisis, and I'm really glad to see that Yamaha is tackling this head on. What's the company you're partnering with to make this happen?
Clearwater Mills LLC is the company in Pasadena, Maryland, that designed the original Mr. Trash Wheel in Baltimore. The gentleman who designed it is a gentleman named John Kellett, and we're working with him directly on this project.
Well, I love the evolution of this, and I think it makes a lot of sense, like you said, to take this from a water-based system to a land-based system where you can, just because it's so much more efficient and it's going to cost less to get rid of that trash. Brunswick, Georgia is the first place this is happening, and that's, I presume, because Yamaha has a strong presence there. But do you see these trash wheels expanding around the nation in our coastal cities, both West Coast and East Coast, if this is successful?
I think it has great potential to expand to other cities, other locations. One of the things that we want to prove with this particular device is that it can work land-based. And if we prove that, then I'd like to be able to find other ways to fund more of these devices.
I'm all for it, and I wish you great success, and I would love to get you on the horn maybe in a year or two, and we can talk about how things are going and hopefully talk about how this program will be expanding to other cities and other waterways in America. So kudos to Yamaha Marine and Yamaha Motors for getting involved with this. I mean, this is a great example of private corporations partnering to doing great things for environment. Martin, thanks so much for sharing this with us today on America Outdoors Radio.
Thank you, John.
And now let's share a few fishing reports with you from around the country. We'll start off near Brunswick with a fishing report from the Georgia DNR. Sea trout catches were good for anglers fishing the beach last week, and the owners of St. Simon's Bait and Tackle reported that the flounder bite was tops from the pier. Both mud minnows and curly-tailed grubs produced fish. Whiting and sharks were also caught in good numbers, and baskets dropped from the pier produced some good blue crab catches. If you're tuning into our show this weekend on KBYR 700 out of Anchorage, Alaska, you might want to get down to Ship Creek because the Alaska Department of Fish and Game says the salmon fishing there has been pretty darn good. Try casting spinners or drifting roe to hook up with one. Another option in the area is Symphony Lake. It opened up on the 1st, and whether you're casting a fly or a small spinner, there are likely to be some hungry Arctic grayling there willing to bite what you've got to offer for them. Checking in with the Sportsman's Warehouse staff in Chico, California, where we air on KPAY, the Feather River is full of shad, and stripers have been on the bite in the lower river, as well as a few quality steelhead. As for bass fishing, Lake Oroville and Shasta Lake have both been fishing well, though not as good as in recent weeks. At Oroville, look for the bass 20 feet deep, and in Shasta, you'll also find them in deeper water, where they're biting on crawfish imitations. Don't forget your trout gear for Shasta either. Currently, the trout are being caught about 50 to 60 feet deep near the mouths of the streams flowing in and out of the lake. And if I was there, I'd probably be fishing for them with a Max Lure wedding ring spinner behind a sling blade. Finally, if you are tuning in from Wyoming, you'll find the Bighorn River has been running high with spring runoff, and it's been tough to fish, but Keyhole Reservoir, according to the Sportsman's Warehouse staff in Gillette, Wyoming, has got some excellent fishing right now. Visibility is clear at the lake, and crappie are hitting on everything. Walleyes can be found along the north shore. They are biting jigs, night crawlers, and minnows, and success for northern pike has been on the upswing too. We've got to wrap this long Independence Day weekend up, but if you find yourself on the web in the next few days, be sure to like and follow our Facebook page at America Outdoors Radio. We post things there that you don't always get to hear about on this show. We've got a website too, AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com. You can hear the latest podcasts on that page, and you can also hear our podcasts on several other platforms too. Just look for America Outdoors Radio. And when you're on our website at AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com, do our sponsors a favor. Check out what they've got going. They are the ones that allow me to bring you this show every week, and I hope you'll support them just like they're supporting us. Getting back to your Independence Day weekend, I hope it's been a blessing for you. I hope that you are enjoying the freedoms that our country offers and the freedoms that we have to go have so much fun at this time of year. Whether it's fishing, whether it's boating, whether it's camping, whether it's hiking, bicycling, maybe some target shooting at the range, or maybe shooting some sporting clays, skeet, or trap. Whatever your pleasure is this weekend, I hope it does involve some time outdoors or in nature. After all, it is your country and your outdoors, so get out there and enjoy it this Independence Day weekend and every weekend beyond that you can.
It doesn't matter what sort of adventure you're after, whether it's big game deep in the backcountry, a day of fishing out on the water, or an overnight in the great outdoors. At Sportsman's Warehouse, we've got the gear in here for what you need out there. Gear up for your next adventure at one of the Sportsman's Warehouse stores or shop online. Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter.